It started like any other Friday afternoon. I was heading home from work, my tote bag in the passenger seat and the same podcast playing I always listen to after a long day. I didn't think twice when the red and blue lights flashed in my rearview mirror. I was going the speed limit, signaling correctly. Still, I pulled over. The officer who approached my window was already agitated. Mid-40s, white male, buzz cut, his mirrored sunglasses hiding whatever expression his eyes held. His tone was clipped. License and registration. Now. I gave a small, polite smile and handed them over without question. My fingers were calm, but I could feel the tension rising. I'd been through this kind of energy before. He glanced at the documents, then back at me. You got somewhere important to be, ma'am? I didn't understand the tone, challenging, accusatory. Just heading home from work, I answered. He snorted. What kind of work? I hesitated. It wasn't because I was hiding anything, quite the opposite, but I'd learned sometimes, telling people too much only made them more uncomfortable. Still, I answered honestly. Government. He raised an eyebrow. Aha. Step out of the vehicle. That was when my heart rate picked up. I glanced at his badge, noting his name, S. Connolly. I unbuckled my seatbelt slowly. Officer, is there a reason? Out. Now. People were starting to slow down and stare as they passed. My car was clean. I had done absolutely nothing wrong. I stepped out into the warm sunlight, trying to stay composed as he led me toward the back of the vehicle. Then, things took a turn, fast. Officer Connolly positioned me near the trunk of my own car. He kept one hand hovering near his belt, not on his weapon, but close enough to send a message. The other hand gripped his radio like he was waiting for an excuse to use it. You been drinking today? He asked. No, sir. Using any substances? Pills? Weed? You people usually got something on you. I froze. You people. I could feel the burn of it behind my ears, but I kept my voice steady. I'm not under the influence of anything, and I haven't broken any laws. May I ask why I was pulled over? He didn't answer. Instead, he circled me like a vulture. You talk real proper for someone cruising around in this part of town. What's your story? I already told you. I work in government. He scoffed. Right. You know how many folks tell me that. Then, without warning, he grabbed my wrist and spun me around, pressing my hands against the trunk. His grip was rough, unnecessary. A passing car honked in protest, but he ignored it. I don't like liars, he muttered. We'll see what your story is. I clenched my jaw, refusing to give him the satisfaction of seeing fear. Officer Connolly, I said firmly, I suggest you check that name on the license again. Carefully. He laughed. You think dropping a name's gonna scare me? I don't care if you're the mayor's niece, I'm not, I said, interrupting him. But my last name carries weight. You should look again before this goes any further. He paused for a beat, then took a step back, clearly annoyed. He walked to his cruiser and sat inside, flipping open his onboard computer. I stood there, palms still pressed to the back of my car, trying to keep my breathing calm. Then I saw it. Through the reflection in his windshield, I watched his expression change. His body stiffened, and his jaw locked up. His eyes darted between the screen and my ID. He slowly stepped out of the cruiser, the aggression gone from his shoulders. Ma'am. I didn't realize, I turned slowly to face him. Didn't realize what? His mouth opened like he wanted to explain, but the words didn't come. For a moment, Officer Connolly just stood there. The shift in his demeanor was almost surreal, like watching a pit bull suddenly back down at the sound of its owner's voice. I wasn't aware of your full background, he said finally, stumbling over the words. I think we've had a misunderstanding here. A misunderstanding? I repeated, my voice calm but clipped. You had all my information in your hand from the start. He glanced around, as if checking to see who might be watching. His voice lowered. Look, I didn't mean any disrespect. It's just, the name threw me. I narrowed my eyes. What about the name? He hesitated, then said the words like they tasted sour in his mouth. Langston. I didn't connect it at first. You didn't think someone named Langston could be driving a regular sedan through a quiet neighborhood after work? He shifted uncomfortably. No, Langston, as in Judge Irene Langston. The federal judge. She's my mother. Silence fell over the stretch of road like a hammer drop. He blinked, then took a slow step back. His voice changed completely, now careful, measured, even a little nervous. She's one of the most respected officials in the state. Yes. And she taught me to keep calm when people in positions of power forget their boundaries. For a second, he looked like a balloon slowly deflating. All that bluster, gone. Listen, let's call it a mistake. I'll clear you right now no, I said, pulling my phone from my pocket. You're going to explain to your supervisor exactly what this mistake was. And I'll be filing a formal report. The color drained from his face. I tapped the screen and scrolled to a saved contact. Who are you calling? He asked quickly, almost panicked now. My mother, I said plainly. She's expecting me for dinner. Officer Connolly's face went pale as I brought the phone to my ear. He was no longer posturing, no longer speaking over me. He was watching every movement I made, the same way someone watches a live wire sway too close. Hi, Mom, I said, keeping my eyes on him. I'm going to be late. A local officer pulled me over and detained me without cause. Yes. Connolly. Badge 2761. Her voice was calm, firm, and instantly commanding, even through the speaker. Is he still standing there? I looked him in the eye. Yes. Good. Let him know I'll be expecting a statement from his precinct tonight. And tell him the circuit judge is already on the other line. When I repeated that to him, Officer Connolly's mouth opened, no sound came out. I didn't realize who she was, he said quietly. I didn't know. You didn't ask, I corrected. You assumed. Cars kept passing, some slowing to glance at the strange scene, a uniformed officer deflating like a schoolboy while a woman half his size stood calmly on her phone. Connolly finally seemed to realize how he looked, and how this would sound once written down. I don't want trouble, he said. It was a mistake. A bad one. Yeah, I said as I lowered the phone. It was. He took a slow step back and looked at the cruiser, then back at me. You're free to go, ma'am, he said finally. I apologize for the inconvenience. I didn't move. Not yet. I want you to say it right. He blinked. I want you to say, I detained you without reason, and I overstepped. Because I did nothing wrong, and you need to remember that. His shoulders slumped, the bravado fully gone. I detained you without reason. And I overstepped. Thank you, I said. Now you may go. He nodded, turned, and walked back to his cruiser. Slowly. Like a man walking away from a live grenade. I waited until Officer Connolly's cruiser disappeared around the corner before I got back into my car. My hands rested on the steering wheel for a moment, steady but warm from the tension. The sun was beginning to dip lower in the sky, casting long shadows over the quiet street. I exhaled slowly, then picked up the phone again. She handled it like a professional, my mother said from the other end, after I filled her in. I've already spoken to Judge Cranford. Connolly's going to be doing a lot of explaining tonight. I didn't ask for details. I didn't need to. The justice system didn't always move quickly, but my mother's name carried weight, not because of politics or favors, but because her reputation was built on principle and discipline. And when someone like Connolly abused his badge, she didn't let it slide. "Are you okay?" she asked. "Yeah. I'm fine. Just tired." She paused, then said something I hadn't expected. "Proud of you. You kept calm. You didn't let his energy control the moment. I learned from the best." We hung up, and I sat there a little longer before starting the engine. As the car rolled back onto the main road, I caught a glimpse of myself in the mirror, composed, but not cold. Not shaken. That's what they never expect. They expect silence. Fear. Submission. But I had a name. And today, that name reminded someone that intimidation only works when people let it. By Monday morning, the incident had already reached internal affairs. A quiet call from the presiding judge of the local circuit had landed on the desk of the precinct chief. Officer Connolly had been placed on administrative review, and several of his past traffic stops were now under re-examination. I didn't speak to the media. I didn't post online. But the system, when it chooses to function, sometimes does the work for you. That evening, I received an email from the police chief's office. "Ms. Langston, we extend a formal apology on behalf of the department regarding your recent encounter with one of our officers. The behavior displayed during your stop does not reflect the values or standards we uphold. The matter is being addressed with utmost seriousness." It was worded carefully, legally, impersonally, but I understood what it meant beneath the surface. Someone powerful had made a call, and things were shifting behind closed doors. Later that week, I received another call, not from my mother, but from someone higher up in D.C. "I heard you kept your head when it mattered," the voice said. "We need more of that around here. Would you ever consider transferring agencies?" It caught me off guard. I hadn't thought about it, I replied honestly. "Well, think about it," they said. "Because names like yours open doors, but it's what you do when the door opens that leaves a legacy." I looked out the window. The same street. The same world. But something had changed, not because someone handed me power, but because I'd reminded someone that I already had it. Weeks passed. The story didn't go viral, but the effect rippled in quieter, more powerful ways. A young officer at the precinct reached out anonymously. She said she'd seen the report. That it gave her hope. "You didn't yell," she wrote. "You didn't cry. You just stood. And it worked." Another message came from a law student, a young woman with the same last name but no relation. "People always ask me if I'm from your family," she said. "Now I say, I hope to be like them." It struck me how powerful restraint could be. How silence in the right moment, deliberate, unshaken silence, could roar louder than any argument. One afternoon, I sat on my mother's porch, sipping coffee. She glanced over the rim of her mug and said without fanfare, "You handled yourself better than most veterans would have." "I didn't do it to prove anything." "I know," she said, "that's what made it so effective. I thought about Officer Connolly sometimes. Wondered if he'd learned anything, or if his ego would just patch itself and move on. But it didn't matter. This story wasn't about him. It was about what happens when someone tries to shrink you, and learns too late that your presence was never small to begin with." Several months later, I walked past a courthouse security checkpoint, not as a visitor, but as a guest speaker. They'd invited me to speak to a group of young cadets training for federal service. I didn't talk about what happened with Officer Connolly directly. I didn't need to. Instead, I spoke about identity, restraint, and the danger of unchecked assumptions. I spoke about the line between authority and abuse, and how knowing your worth means never needing to shout it. Afterward, one of the cadets came up to me. "Miss Langston," he said, "you didn't say his name once, but everyone here knew what you were talking about." I smiled. That's the point. The moment was never about him. It was about how you hold the line, even when someone else crosses it. That moment, like so many others, became part of a larger story, one not told through headlines, but through example. Through record. Because when someone with power crosses the line, it's easy to respond with rage. But it's far more lasting to respond with presence. And make sure they never forget who they just tried to humiliate. Or whose name they just learned the hard way.